2006 Acura TL. Steering rack and pinion is leaking. I'm Brian Essen from How To Automotive. I'm going to show you how to replace that. We're going to start by getting the car up in the air on your rack and removing the front wheels. So one of our first goals is going to be to get the steering coupler off that attaches to the old rack. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to lower your car back down after you get the wheels off. Is crawl inside. So to get the steering coupler off, we need to remove this cover that's right here by just in between the gas pedal and the brake pedal, and then the shaft. We need to get the shaft off to get the steering coupler off. So remove the cover, and to remove the cover, it's kind of just pressed on these little studs here, so you can pop it off like so, and then work it out. Now, as you can see, we need to get to that bolt and unbolt that bolt, and then slide the shaft upwards. So once you remove that bolt, like I said, it'll just slide off. It'll slide up and down inside this into the shaft here. So just slide it off and just let it hang. And my steering wheel was pretty much in the straight up and down position when I took that off, so hopefully yours will be too. Okay, now that I've got the steering coupler off, you want to take a 24mm wrench and loosen the jam nuts on the tie rods, the inner tie rods. So loosen the jam nuts on both sides, and then on both, you're going to take off the cotter pin and take off the nut. And you're going to do that on, like I said, both sides of the car, and get those off. So after removing the cotter pins and running the bolt down, we're going to leave the threads on like that, and then you can take a large hammer and you can strike it right here, and that'll jar it and it'll actually pop it free. See if I can do it on camera here. And as you can see, it popped up. So you'll do that on both sides, and you can take it off. And doing it like that, then you won't damage the boot on your outer tie rod. So once you get your tie rods off and your jam nuts are loose, you can go ahead and spin these off and count the threads. So 1, 2, like that, all the way off, and keep track of how many threads come off. So when you go to put them back on, it kind of gives you a ballpark of where the alignment's going to be. So count your threads, write it down, and then when you go to put it back on, like I said, you'll screw it back on pretty much the exact amount of turns that you took it off. And do that on both sides. So our next step after getting our tie rods off is we're going to put our focus into lowering the back half of the subframe down a couple of inches. And to achieve that, we actually need to start on the front and remove this shield here. And once we get that shield off, there's some bolts in here we're going to loosen up. So after getting the cover off here, what you want to do is back the bolts out on the front of the subframe here, just a couple threads, like 5 or 6 threads on, and also loosen this bracket here a couple, but leave the bolts in there. And you're going to do the same thing with that one, and it's going to drop down a little bit, and that's what you want, just a hair. So after getting both sides loose a little bit, the subframe and the engine and the cradle will drop down a 1/4 inch or so. That's what you want. And now we're going to move back to the back, and now you need a pole jack, and you're going to support it underneath here, and if it right, like centrally located in the car, so centrally located. And now on the back, we're going to completely remove the rear mounts. So we're going to remove both of these. As you can see, this is the mess that our old rack and pinions made. And so we're going to remove on both sides, remove those, and the pole jack, I'm sorry, will hold it up in place. And also right here on the side, by the side of the rack and pinion, there's another mount that mounts the subframe to the car. We're going to slowly remove those too. So now that you got the bolts out, now you can take your pole jack and screw it down. And as you can see, the subframe is coming down. You need to screw it down just about that far, about an inch or so, 1.5 inches. And what that does is it gives us enough room to get in here and get to the bolts and loosen everything up and get the lines off so we can get the rack out of the car. So now we need to shift our focus to the lines that come into the rack and pinion here and here. So get yourself a bucket, because the fluid's going to drain out. So if you follow the back of the transmission where the right side axle seal goes in, and you look up right there, you can see the lines, and you can get to the lines. And the return line, it has a rubber hose on it. You can take the rubber hose off, and then you can take the fitting off later, but you need to get the pressure line off. It has the fitting, which is right here, which is that one. So take that one off. To get the pressure line off, I used a 19mm line wrench, and I'll show you my setup. So I got the line wrench on the fitting up there, and there wasn't a lot of room to get a lot of leverage on it. So what I did was I took my large pry bar, as you can see, it's about 4 feet long, 5 feet long here, and I slid it up in between the transmission here and hooked it on the wrench and pried it, and that popped the fitting free for me. Now you can take it and work it off by hand, or if not, you can use a mini shorty wrench and work it off faster. So once you crack it free with the line wrench, then you can use like a short wrench like this and work it the rest of the way out. So from the back side, you can actually see the hose clamp, and you just reach your arms around and you can loosen the clamp up and take the hose off. And once you get that off, now we want to focus our attention to removing the 2 mounting bolts there and there. So to get to the bolt on the back side here, let's see if I can show you my setup. I used a socket with a wobbly, and then up here you can reach over the top and loosen it up. And then for the one that's on the inside here, I just got an air ratchet in there and took it. So now on the passenger side, we need to remove the mounting bolt that's here, and you just kind of move the hose out of the way a little bit, and there's a mounting bolt there, and to remove those 2. So once you get the mounting bolts off, you have to put a pry bar like this in there and underneath the mount and pry it up like that. And then on the opposite side of the car, you have to have somebody else pull the rack and pinion through. So when I went to pull the rack and pinion through, it was hitting up in here like this. So what I had to do, I had to remove the wishbone bolt from the control arm here, and then also there's 2 motor mounts here and here. I had to remove the bolts that went through here, and there's another mount above that actually holds the transmission in the car, so you don't have to worry about the transmission falling out or coming out with it. So after I did that, then I was able, well, at first I lowered my pole jack as low as it can go. It's actually not even touching the frame, as you can see. And then I took my pry bar and put it in here, and I was able to pry another inch or so down, and then that gave me just enough clearance to pull the rack and pinion through the tunnel. So now when I go back in with the new one, I'll do the same thing. I'll pry it down, fish it through. Before we put the new rack in, we need to transfer a few parts over. So we're going to transfer this line fitting here for the return line. We'll put that on. We'll put the boot that I'll have to clean it up first, and then this boot that went over the fitting here, and then we need to transfer over the rubber mount that goes here, and then we can proceed to put it back in the car. So now we're going to feed it back through now that we got all our parts transferred over. And you're going to have to do, like I said, you're going to have to pry it down or whatever and wiggle it in there. And then probably have to have somebody else on the opposite side help pull it through. So now that you got the rack and pinion routed back through, go ahead and start the 2 mounting bolts. And I'll just start them and leave them loose until I get the other side mounting bolts started up. That way, if you need any play left or right or whatever, you have a little wiggle room. So now that you got the bolt started on the opposite side, you need to route that rubber grommet that mounts on here through and get it in position. And then after you do that, then you can put your top mount back on and go ahead and bolt that down. And after that's bolted down, then you can tighten the bolts on the opposite side. So after getting the mounting bolts all tightened up, go ahead and start your lines and go ahead and tighten those up. Okay, now that our lines are started, we want to just make sure that our rubber boot here is pointing in the right direction. And you want the larger side, it's kind of oblong shaped or off-centered with the pointing towards the top. You want it to seal up against the body of the car, or the floor of the car. So you just position it where it'll seal up against it. So then after that, we're going to take our full jack here, and we're going to slowly raise the engine back, the subframe back up, and then start our bolts. So it looks like our old bolts had thread sealer on them, so we're going to put some thread sealer on it. The brand we use is Permanex, and it's blue thread locker. And so you're just going to put a little bit on the bolts that hold the subframe in, and then go ahead and start those and tighten them, and then you're going to run them up until they're snug, and then I'll give you the torque spec. So you're going to torque the bigger bolts on the corners, the 4 of them, at 76 foot-pounds. These at 69 foot-pounds. And then the ones that went vertical up here at 45 foot-pounds. So 45 foot-pounds on the ones that go vertical here next to the rack. And the same thing for the front ones. 76 and 69. So once you got all those torqued down, then you can put the 4 motor mount bolts that went here to hold the tranny mounts. Put those on and torque those down, and then you can put your front shield back on. Okay, now that we got our shields back on, we can take our outer jam nuts here, take them off the old rack, and transfer them onto the new one. So we'll screw these on, and then we'll screw on the outer tie rods, counting the numbers that we took them back off. That'll get us back in the ballpark. So after getting the outer tie rods on and torqued down and the new cotter pins put in, on the driver's side, you can go ahead and put the bolt that holds the wishbone back in and tighten that down. And then also your jam nuts, you can go ahead and screw them up tight and tighten those down. Okay, so now I'm going to look around with my flashlight and look around everything that I touched and just double check that I didn't leave anything loose, and do a final check. And if all that looks good, go ahead and put your wheels on, torque your wheels down, and lower the car down. Now that you got the car back down, what you want to do is you want to fill up the reservoir with power steering fluid, with Honda approved power steering fluid. They have their own special formula stuff. So I like to fill it all the way up until it's completely full to the top. So because when we first start it, it's going to suck the fluid into the rack, and that level's going to drop, and then you're going to adjust your level after that. So now it's time to put the steering coupler back on. So you want to make sure that the wheels are pretty straight, pretty consistently straight on left and right side. So now it's time to put the splines I was talking about are on the shaft right there. So there's no, some of them have like a master spline, they can only spline and they can only go on one way, but this one doesn't, so you can have it off center. So now that the wheels are pretty much in a straightforward position, you want to center your steering wheel as best you can, and then slip the it had this little plastic piece on there, so you want to slip that on, and then slip the coupler over it. So this actually can go over it first, like so, and then slip them both on. So before I slipped it on, what I did is I had one of my coworkers hold the steering wheel dead center and hold it in position while I went underneath the car, underneath the floorboard here, and then I slid it on and then bolted it, and then once it was in position, then I bolted it in. Now I'm going to put the cover on. Now you can take it to have your alignment done. And once you get the cover back on and take it over to your alignment shop and have that done, you're pretty much completes the job of changing the power steering rack on a 2006 Acura TL. I'm Brian Eslick from How To Automotive, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos and remind you to subscribe. Thank you.